Good evening. I call the June 6th Killam School Building Committee to order. Sorry for the delay. We were waiting for a quorum. June 17th.
June 17th.
June 17th, thank you. And we have members online, so we're going to do a roll call vote. Karen?
Yes.
John?
Yep.
Kirk? No Kirk. Sarah? No Sarah. No Ed. No Greg. Pat?
Here.
Nancy?
Here.
And Carla here. So thank you, everyone. I will quickly review our agenda. We are open to public comment if there is any. We will do liaison reports. The OPM team is going to give us an update on staffing. We'll hear from our designers and talk about the PSR process and sustainability updates. Then we'll go into the OPM report for financials and talk about total project budget. We'll review warrants and invoices, approve our 5-9 prior meeting minutes, and talk about next meeting updates. So we will start with public comment. We have nobody in the audience. And Caitlin is helping us out tonight. Caitlin, do we have anybody online?
No, just staff.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we'll go on to liaison reports.
Nothing really. I will mention to the committee that we did get an answer back from National Grid that our policy is not to fund new construction. Like, really? It took you 6 months to come up with a policy? Thank you. But so that's kind of where we're at now, but I guess we'll address this in the sustainability working group.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
And I will do a shout out to Ed Ross for our financial forum that we had on May 28th. It was great to get everybody together to talk about all of the different priorities in the town. So we presented for a Killam project, and there was a presentation for their senior center project and for our CPA. So it was good to get that dialogue going. So thanks, Ed. And we'll go on to the OPM updates.
Just before I get into one other thing that I thought might fall in liaison reports, we're gonna be talking a little bit about the pillars in a little bit. Do we wanna mention that, or we'll just do it when we get to the commitment?
You know what, we can't, there are two times, do you wanna mention it under the?
Under the financials?
Yeah,
That's fine.
let's do it.
Alright.
And in case we wanna show that video, Caitlin's prepared to show the video.
Okay, perfect. So,
I'm sorry, Pat. Pat, do you have any update or report?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Also, thank you, Carl.
Thank you. So we'll follow up with some exciting news.
all right, so for those of you in the room, you can see Shirley is here today. I'd like to introduce her. We're proposing to make a slight adjustment on our team, bringing Shirley in to be the project manager, the prime contact that would work with the design team, with the contractor. Again, as the project director, I would continue to work with you folks, but Shirley will also be doing a lot of the day-to-day with the staff and things like that. You know, a lot of the work we've been doing all along. I think we had an initial meeting with Carla to introduce Shirley, and then Matt was there as well. And I think through various meetings, she started to meet some other folks, but I'd like to maybe give her an opportunity here just to kind of give a little bit of her background. And I will just say that we're very happy to have her join our team and hopefully joining your team as well.
Do you need me to stand? I'm good sitting down. Good evening, everyone. It's nice to meet you all. My background is in architecture. I went to school for my undergrad master's at Wentworth University now. And I recently just came from Brown University. I've been there for 5 to 7 years. I did a lot more project fit outs and renovations there. And actually, I specialized in booth management prior to there as well, so I can help you guys there. But I'm really excited to be here and looking forward to working with you all.
So, welcome.
Thank you.
And I will say that we really thank Susanna for all the work that she's
Yes.
put in. And we know that she is available if we have any information to pass along, and we're really excited to have you on board.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and just for the record, Susanna is sticking with our company. She's still always available. She's actually been helping both of us kind of with the transition here as well, and she's going to continue to support us as needed.
Yeah. She's great. I've been talking to her on the sideline as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
So the process for the MSBA is that we are going to send a formal letter requesting this with an updated org chart to Matt as the town manager. He then has to send a letter to the MSBA basically accepting that. So we'll send you a draft of that as well, so that'll help with that. But it's not technically required, but we often request that the school building committee vote to kind of support that decision if that's acceptable to you, so that you kind of support Matt's moving that along.
Sure. And we'll also, along with that letter, Matt, we'll update the form. And you're not actually listed on the form, but you have a new title, Matt has a new title on that form. So we'll update that form and send that all along
Perfect.
to them at the same time.
Yeah. And if you want, we can work with you on that. If you send it direct, that's fine. If you want to send it to us, we'll send it to make sure we get the acknowledgement back, because it's a two-way street there. We got to send it to them, but we also have to make sure we get something back from them acknowledging it, so.
And that's what we're trying to do moving forward, just to kind of create our own little policy, is everything we have to send to the MSBA, if it can go through Colliers, because then they can track it and make sure that it's done.
So we're chasing it, you don't have to chase it. We'll get it and we'll get it back to you.
I need one of those in my life.
We all do. We all do. And we have the form too. I know that Jackie has that form.
Excellent.
We'll send that over. So we should do a vote on this, right? So let's formulate, I move to accept Shirley Ng as our new project manager for Colliers.
Second.
And we'll do a roll call vote.
We have some discussion first.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I just want to put out there to the committee, I don't anticipate this will happen very often, but I want to suggest that that the next time we need to have a change, that it comes to the full committee rather than the full committee catching up. I think it's significant enough. We only have 4 major so far, 4, and maybe it'll get bigger, but I would just say in the future, like, do this process where the full committee with lots of voting members weigh in, and then the rest of the process seems fine and straightforward.
With that, if it comes to the full committee, that may not be convenient in terms of meetings, maybe a month's wasted time, as it were.
Well, I don't think these things, that's a great point. Also, there's, some sensitivity issues. So as I said, I don't think this is gonna happen very often, but I can definitely say that, these plans were made over a good 60 days. So hopefully it won't happen again, but I just think, just kind of a heads up that it really needs to come to the full committee, and then maybe we do executive session if it's necessary, but anyway. Trying to go with the flow, but your point as well taken.
Any other discussion? And we're ready for the vote. Pat?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Carla? Yes. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the designer. They're going to do the PSR process and sustainability update. Lee or Jenny, I'm happy to share that if that makes it easier, or if one of you are going to share, that's fine as well.
I have it queued up. I'll go ahead and share. Thank you. Okay, so just to run through the tasks that we've completed since our last meeting, we've wrapped up a couple of testing items that were outstanding. We completed a hydrant flow test, and I'll report out to you in a few slides on these later in my deck. We've completed environmental soil testing. We've received the final report for the geotechnical investigation, and we are working on the HVAC system selection, and I will share with you more information about that. And we are revising site plans based on Reading Fire Department access requirements, and we have a meeting with them later this week. This is a look at our schedule. The MSBA is currently reviewing the PDP submittal. They don't give us a firm timeline on when, on how long that review will take, but we think at the outside it should be 60 days. So we're expecting that back sometime in July. And then just kind of looking at what we're going to be doing during this PSR phase that we're just starting is our goal is to select a preferred option in August. And in the interim, we have, I keep forgetting how many options, but 10-ish. And our goal in the interim is to see if we can reduce the number of options by eliminating some that are we think are not the preferred option for various reasons. And the more we eliminate, the more time we can focus on improving the options that remain. So we can put more effort into refining those plans, starting to develop the architectural expression, et cetera. And then we will be preparing the planning to have the approved draft PSR or approve the draft PSR report with SBC on August 12th. So this is a look ahead at the SBC meetings and the agendas. Next month in July, we hope to be able to reduce some options and also have a discussion, and hopefully maybe we'll be ready to reduce some options on pre-K enrollment issue. We're hoping to also have the MSBA PDP feedback by then, but that's kind of out of our control. The 22nd, we're currently holding in case an additional SBC meeting is needed to reduce more options. But if it's not needed, we can eliminate that and meet on August 5th to select the preferred option. And at that time, we will also be sharing the findings and recommendations for the HVAC system. And then on the 12th, be approving draft preferred schematic report.
So Jenny, just a quick question on that. Sharing the finding for the HVAC, we're not saying we're picking an HVAC at that point. We're just kind of giving an update, right? That's not tied to the selection of the option. Or is it?
If we are, I'm hoping that we will be able to select the HVAC system. Our intent is to have all the information that is needed to make that selection. It's possible that the SBC will decide that they need more information.
Okay.
But the intent is to make the selection, yeah. Which is a little earlier than the usual timing for that decision.
Jen, can I ask a question regarding that? One of the options is obviously geothermal, but we
Yes.
have minimal information concerning geothermal properties of the site. We have no deep borehole, so we don't know where the rock is. If there is rock, I presume there's rock sooner or later. We know that this part of the world has a particular characteristic in terms of heat. It's a low enthalpy area. It's not, we don't do in Iceland and places like that. So, but I'm not sure that we can make a rational decision on the geothermal without having some more information. And we're not going to have that by August the 12th or whatever it is. So, how would you see that fits in with the scheme?
You might be right. I would suggest that we discuss that in the next sustainability committee meeting, which you're a part of, and kind of evaluate whether we are ready to make a recommendation, and if we are not, then we are not.
I think either way, it would be a great opportunity to have some updates on that. If we're ready to make the decision, I think we can absolutely, but if we're not ready, maybe we talk about those at that point.
I mean, the decision might be, that more further investigation should be done on the geothermal, or we might, currently on HVAC side, we're considering 4 plant options and 3 room distribution options. Maybe we winnow those down to 2 plant options and, 1 room distribution option or something, and say that there's more investigation that's needed and this is the path that we're going to take. You might be right, John, I may be ahead of myself, and we may not be at the point of making a decision. But, yeah, go ahead.
Well, if this were kind of critical path programming, we would have float times, we would have the earliest start and the late start. What is the latest start that we can make this decision or make a recommendation concerning HVAC systems? What happens if we don't make it in the beginning of August, in other words?
So we're exceptionally early in starting this process. So typically this process would not have been started until, let's say, September. So we have a lot of float on this decision.
Okay, so we have a lot of float is what you're saying. Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So I would say big picture, before we submit the schematic design in about a year, we have to have it finalized. I'm not saying we're gonna wait that long, but I would say probably sometime between now and Halloween, Thanksgiving is when you'd probably want to be making those decisions. So, yeah.
I mean, I get the impression that we're trying to rush this a little bit and trying to get not just a decision, but a way the wind's blowing kind of thing, a little too early. That's my gut feeling.
And I think we are trying to be thoughtful on it, but I know we're also getting a lot of people asking about it. So that's why we're talking about it right now is, we have people asking, so we want to provide answers. So that's what but I think an initial update or an update at that point is good, and we'll see where we're at that point. Okay.
Thank you, John. Great question.
Okay.
Jenny, can I ask you a quick question, please?
Please.
If for the PDP submittal, is the MSBA waiting for anything from us right now? I know they requested 2 items, and I remember us getting 1 back to them. Do they have everything they have asked for so far?
The other item they wanted is the approved meeting minutes from our last meeting, which we will approve today.
Perfect.
And
Okay.
then Jackie will send it to them.
Great.
I don't think that would be holding up their review.
I just want to make sure we've given them everything.
I think oftentimes this first submission, part of it is that the MSBA sends a chunk of this to the DESE for the Department of Education to review, and it's usually them waiting for that response back to give their response. That's typically what I say.
Thank you.
These are the current criteria that we're thinking about in order to help reduce our options. So questions we're asking and we'll be putting to the SBC in July. Is a 3-story option viable? What is the trade-offs between a larger footprint with a 2-story option and then you lose site space versus gaining more site space with a 3-story option? In terms of the internal organization, is a quote-unquote fat building with maybe some spaces with less natural light and windows viable versus a longer, skinnier building, but then you have maybe longer corridors, more travel time? Are options that require swing space, are those viable? And the pre-K enrollment decision, which is primarily, we understand, a cost-benefit analysis. So we'll be coming with more information about all of this in July.
And this is Lee for a second. Hi.
Hi.
Want you all to know, if you don't, that we did speak with the educational leadership team, the teachers, before they left on Friday for vacation and the end of the year, and showed them options to get their very specific feedback about educational organization. And they were very clear, after looking at the different plans and the different 3D options that we will be showing you, what their thoughts were and which they preferred for an internal organization of a building that worked best for them. So we will share that with you so that you can make a good decision based on what's best or what they desire. Fair enough?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought I took this out. This is, so the geotechnical, the final report came back, but there was nothing different in it than what I had shared with you previously. We also got, sorry, go ahead.
Jen, is that report available on our website?
I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know that we forwarded it to be uploaded yet. I think we have the information, and if you feel that you want it uploaded, we can.
I've never seen a borehole log that hasn't really excited me, so
All right, let's get it up there. That sounds great.
I'm sorry, it's, I'm a weird.
Yeah, no, we get excited about
Civil
different
engineers
things,
are
that's why
really
you're
weird
here.
about that stuff.
John, I second that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, we'll make sure to,
Need it published on the website, but certainly the committee should see those.
Yes,
Oh,
sure,
okay, thank
I
you.
will be happy to share with you.
Good.
We received the environmental soil testing findings where they analyzed samples from the geotechnical boreholes, and there were no VOCs, SVOCs, et cetera, no chemicals at concentrate at reportable levels. Sorry, the language is very difficult. Nothing at a reportable level, so that's good.
Yeah, just on that one, I always like to tell everybody, they're scientists, they're never gonna say zero or nothing, because it can be 1 part per million, part per billion. So when they say below reportable levels, that's good. So, if somebody asks, you can never say there's none, but you can say it's below a level that we can report.
I can't remember the last time we had a site in Reading that came back with no fun stuff, so yay, go team.
Yeah. We also did the hydrant flow test, which is just measuring the water pressure in the hydrants to determine whether a fire pump will be required, and the preliminary test is that a fire pump would not be required. So that's good as well. Okay, so this is an update on the HVAC system selection process and what we are doing. So we had a meeting with the sustainability subcommittee on May 21st to share an initial set of options, which I will show you in very high level in a minute. We're currently getting that priced, both first cost and lifetime LCCA. Help me out here, Mike. What's the terminology I'm looking for? Lifetime operating cost.
Yeah, operating cost and cost of replacement, lifetime costs.
Yeah. Thank you. And we're also doing an evaluation of the incentives, what we think are the likely incentives that you could get for each system. So we will come back with that information, all the cost information, to the Sustainability Committee on July 9th. And we'll ask them to make a recommendation to the SBC. Like I said earlier, that recommendation could be, continue to investigate these two systems. We need more information here. We need more information there. Or it might be this seems like the best option, and this is the one that we recommend to be selected.
Carl, can I ask a question? Jenny, can I just ask you, can we change that to working group so it doesn't imply it's not a subcommittee, we're not posting, we're not making decisions?
Sure.
Just for clarity's sake, thank you.
The 4 plant systems that are being investigated are a full geothermal system with centralized water to water heat pumps, a hybrid geothermal system with where some percentage of the load is provided by geothermal, a majority of the load is provided by geothermal, but then there's a backup system for heating and cooling on the hottest days. An air source VRV system, which is like a split system, and and then we are also assessing the kind of most traditional option, which is an air-cooled chiller and boiler.
And just on that, Karen, I'll answer your question that I think we have to have that 4th option so that we have a baseline that we can compare against. So we want to be able to understand that the baseline, you know, traditional building that you've done for the last 50 years would be this. And the cost savings or increase compared to that would be based off of, you know, it's just to give us a baseline to start from.
Okay, so I just learned about air to water, air
Sourced.
air to water, which is probably something we might wanna look at. Apparently there are some, well, it's very widely used in Europe, and there are some reasons where it could be a really good system for a large scale building like this. I'm assuming this won't be news to our technical person that these guys have brought in, but and maybe it fits really in that hybrid category because it can be powered off of geothermal too, I think.
And I think Jenny and Lee have mentioned it before, like when the project they're doing in Swampscott right now is a hybrid system, so that system, part of that was just the sheer volume of the wells they needed. They didn't have enough space on site. Part of it was cost. So that system, heating and cooling is done off of the geothermal, but ventilation and tempering of air is done off of air source system. Still very efficient, still working within those high efficient systems.
Okay,
So-
we'll take it up at our sustainability work group.
Now, we will be given, or we will be guided in this process by the mechanical engineers.
Correct.
Yes.
And what is their mandate? What have we told them that we need to get from them? Have we told them, I'm going to raise an old issue here, have we told them to consider embodied carbon in their machinations? Or are we forgetting embodied carbon completely? Because that's a part of the life cycle costs. Is the and I get the impression that geothermal systems are very high in terms of embodied carbon. And if we just ignore that, we get a false reading. So what is the mandate that we've given them in terms of looking at the energy used during the construction of these systems? Have we told them anything, or we've just?
I'll start, and then Jenny, if you want to expand on it at all. I think the initial direction we gave is that first and foremost, we need to meet current stretch code. We need to meet LEED Silver. Those are prerequisites that we need. We've actually we've made the recommendation that we're trying to get the additional 3 bonus points, so that's above the stretch code for energy efficiency, and we're getting the 4th bonus point, which is for higher indoor air quality. So that is kind of the minimum that we have to do, is all of those items. Anything beyond that is why we have multiple options that we want to review. To your point, John, I personally don't know that I have talked to them specifically about embodied carbon, but I think maybe Lee and his team and Jenny, I heard you.
Yeah, so this is Lee. John, I spoke very specifically with Bangshi, the energy consultant, and others to do a parallel embodied and a carbon analysis as well.
Excellent.
So yes, the answer is we never forgot it.
Okay, that's good. Yep.
We want it to be part of your decision process. And this whole thing with the 4 options here is really to show you the biggest range possible so that you feel comfortable picking something in between if you want.
I am not sure. We have talked with Avamshi about embodied carbon at a high level. I will confess that embodied carbon was not on my list of criteria for evaluating the HVAC system, because when we talk about embodied carbon, typically we're talking about decisions like to renovate or to build new, decisions like which construction materials to use in the building. So it was not on my radar, but I will bring it to my team and see, and we'll get working on including an embodied carbon analysis. I'm not sure if we'll have that ready for July 9th.
The important thing is that we were looking at both types of carbon. And there was a way to kind of graph where you started to pass the benefit of it. So we can look at that again with Vamshi. He's done it in the past. And again, it's not the kind of thing that you use, well, you have to use it carefully. That's all. But we're learning.
Thank you. And then we're looking at different room level distribution options as well, which each have their kind of pros and cons, whether it's displacement ventilation, chilled beams, or a VRV system. Our next steps are meeting with the Sustainability Committee on July 9th to advance the HVAC selection process. Next SBC meeting will be July 8th, where we'll be looking at reducing the number of options. And we will have a community meeting on July 15th to share, we will be sharing this process of reducing the number of options with them as well. Any questions before I turn it over to Mike?
Well, the one question on the room level design options. What is the conventional method of heating and air conditioning a classroom? I mean, are we going out on a limb to consider things like displacement ventilation, or is that something which is becoming more used?
I think displacement ventilation is quite common in the K-12 school market. It's not necessarily that common in other types of buildings.
To be honest,
The most conventional system would be, of these would be a variant refrigerant flow. The most conventional of all possible options would be a variable airflow, variable air volume VAV system. That would be combined with the air-cooled chiller and boiler.
That's what I was gonna say, Jenny. I've actually seen displacement systems. I've actually replaced old buildings that had displacement systems. So buildings that were built in the 40s and 50s and everything. They do take up more space, but they're less mechanical parts, things of that nature. I think the chill beams in the air source are, I'll call it newer technology around here, newer being in the last 15 years, not something brand new, but something, as we've gone to more air-cooled systems, ground source systems, things like that, that drives you towards these other options. But VARs that Jenny just mentioned, the other thing we used to have is univentilators, like kind of what you have in the room back there.
Mm-hmm.
Univentilators nowadays, I don't know of a univentilator on the market that meets code. Because what happens is, to make the energy code, they get a little louder. And then they don't meet the air, the noise requirements. To get them quieter, then they get less efficient. So it's kind of a catch-22. So you don't really, that was what you saw in all classrooms and all schools probably built in the 80s, 90s, and even into the early 2000s. But they're really getting completely away from those and getting into, these are probably the three primary that we're seeing now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny.
I'll turn it over to Mike.
I'm gonna jump back on and share my screen here now. So we're jumping into the financials. Not a lot of new information here, but we want to be able to share it with you every month so that you can take a look at it. And if you have any questions, happy to review it. Currently, we're working towards an overall project budget of $2.2 million. To date, we're going to actually ask for a couple of adjustments on budgets today. So we're looking to have a revised total of $56,000 of contingency drawn, which still leaves us $563,000 as a balance. In addition to that contingency there, you can see we actually have about $289,000 on the environmental and site that we haven't committed yet. Doesn't mean we're not going to commit it at some point. A lot of these budgets were based off of anticipated costs. We actually have two of those costs coming up, and I'll be talking about them in just a minute. So I'm going to move on to the next sheet. I'm always welcome to come back to this one as you have questions. So I mentioned we're having a couple of budget adjustments, asking you to move contingency. And if you remember, when I first started presenting these, what we said is we're gonna gray out things that we've talked about before, and we're gonna not gray out the new ones. So I'm gonna focus on the new, but again, if you have a question on the gray, happy to answer it. So the two new items we have here tonight, one is for $2,750, and that is for some additional estimating services, and I'll talk about that in just a second. And then the second one is for $3,600. This is to cover the contract for Cartoon. That was a contract that we actually met with the communications group. The communications group made a recommendation to Matt as the town manager. It was under $50,000. He got a recommendation from us. We moved forward with that contract, so we're going to explain that to you here in a second. But we'd like to have a vote of acknowledgement. We can't vote to accept or reject it because it's already been basically accepted, but we want to have an understanding on that. So I'm gonna just jump one more page so that I can actually show you the details of the three new commitments. Two of them are related to those two items. So the first new commitment we have here is for LBA Amendment number 6. Don't confuse 6 and 7 just because they happen to have the exact same dollar value. That's just a coincidence. But item number 6 is for soil testing, stormwater system locations. This is going back to, if I can jump back a second, that is going back to this line item here, environmental and site. We're looking to take $2,700 and add it into that total, basically. And the reason why we're doing that is that penny of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We want to know what's in the ground. We want to see what's out there. And you've seen some of the borings. We saw that already. So that's what this is for, is to do soil testing and stormwater system updates. So we'd be looking hopefully for a vote of approval of that tonight. The second one here is for LBA additional cost estimating services. So we typically do a cost estimate at different points in the process. Because we've had a lot of discussions on HVAC systems and cost of those, Jenny and Lee came to, at the time, I think it was Susanna and I, and said, we'd like to ask for a little bit of additional estimating services to provide some additional feedback on that. And it might be even a little bit more than just the HVAC, but just having the estimators do that look, again, I wholeheartedly support that. I think it's good information. That, the more information we have, the more information you have, the better your decision's gonna be, basically. So maybe I'll start with those two, because those are both LBA. If there's any questions, I think we have it in the backup. I'd be happy to flip to it, but I've really kind of given you a synopsis of what each of those is. No questions? All right. Would anybody,
Actually, I got a couple questions on that.
Sure thing.
Just, the front sheet, you noted a $56,000, move out of contingency,
Yes.
but those items don't add up to that. Is there more to come on that?
So that's the total list here. If we added up the 20,000 here, the 100, it's all these pluses and minuses, basically. That adds up to 56,000.
Okay, got it. So, okay, so the only change is the.
Yeah, the only new ones is basically about $6,000, the 2,750 here and the 36. So the previous ones were all previously approved. You can see back, some of them back almost a year ago, and then some of them a little bit more recently through the winter and then early spring.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Mike, I may be getting ahead of myself here, but on the you have a proposal here. I'm trying to read it here. For a detention system, digging test pits, basically. Does that include doing a flow test, or is that just digging the ground and finding out what's there?
I think this initial is just digging the ground and finding what's there. Lee or Jenny, if I'm wrong, correct me on that, but we're going to have additional test pits down the line. This is going to be a couple of step process, because right now we're digging based off of where we think the detention might be, with 10 options still on the table, and once we narrow it down to one option, we'll be able to define that a little bit better, and we might have to go back out there and retest for the foundations or retest for the parking lots or things like that. But I think we're pretty set on where the building's going, but it doesn't mean we won't have to do additional tests in the
So
future.
this is not an infiltration test, this is just looking at the soils, basically.
I think it's just visual inspections to understand what we're dealing with, if we have any clay or if we have good sandy material to kind of start that process that you're
I
talking
mean,
about.
I think from the boreholes, the groundwater was like 6 feet below ground, so it's if you put a detention system in, you don't have
A lot of room to go.
a lot of depth to go, no.
Yeah.
It's, okay.
No, you're absolutely right.
Question. So I got all excited that the site seems clean, but like in your experience, how often do you find stuff buried under schools?
So I would say there's always a chance for it. Again, I think a little bit, the more that we spend, I'm not saying we want to spend a lot of money now, but the more that you spend upfront doing those investigations, testing, the less likely you're going to find something unexpected. I'm not going to say you're not going to find something, but I think it seems, I'll just say, my experience working with district so far, you're pretty on the ball. You've got good records. You've got histories there. So if there was an oil tank out there, I think you would have known about it and things like that. So maybe I'm a little less worried about that, but you never know. Those first tests came back clean. I will say, I started my first job out of college was working for site contractors, and back then we never tested soils and stuff unless if I opened up a hole and I saw an oil tank or I saw dark soils, I might test it, but we weren't testing for background arsenic from naturally occurring sources or things like that. So the testing has gotten a lot more stringent as time has gone on. So I can't say that we're out of the woods yet, but that first test is a move in the right direction.
Thanks.
Before we go to a vote, do we want to talk about Cartoon EDU for a second?
Sure thing.
And we can even show part of the video.
Okay, yeah.
If you can just cue up the video. So this gentleman from Cartoon EDU reached out to Tom, the superintendent, Tom Milczewski, and explained and talked to him about this service that he has to provide. What they ended up having a meeting, Tom and Lindsay and Olivia, and they put together these short blips of easily digestible information, like 1 to 2 minute structures, and they're in, he calls them pillars of different parts of the process. He charges $600 for each pillar, and he's proposing 6 different pillars for us. So Caitlin's going to just show us an example of Situate Public Schools.
Situate Public Schools embarked on the MSBA process in May 2020 to evaluate the needs of the aging elementary schools in our district. After exhaustive work by our community, we proposed a new elementary school be built to consolidate Cushing and Hatherley schools and provide more capacity for pre-K. The Massachusetts School Building Authority accepted our proposal. MSBA is a state agency that accepts a limited number of applications through a highly competitive process each year to provide grants for the construction and renovation of public schools. By entering this process, Situate stands to receive up to $35.8 million in state money to help pay for the new school's construction. That money reduces the cost to Situate's taxpayers. For the past 16 months, we've updated our community on the feasibility study, preliminary design, and schematics of our plan. We're now at the project scope and budget approval phase of this project. In this video, we'll explain why our district needs to construct a new elementary school. We'll share how the proposed design of the new elementary school meets these needs. We'll lay out our plan for consolidating the 2 schools in a way that's least disruptive to our community and our students. We will provide detailed numbers on what the project will cost, what Situate's share of the expenses, how we plan to finance this expense, and the impact it will have on our tax assessments. And we will explain what a yes and no vote mean for the project, which our district will present to our town's voters for approval at a special town meeting on April 29th and on the town election ballot on May 18th. And our district leaders sought MSBA funding for a new elementary school because both Hatherley and Cushing have reached the end of their useful lives. Here's how. Hatherley, opened in 1962, was identified by the MSBA as having the greatest needs of any of the elementary schools. Cushing is just 2 years younger, opened in 1964. They both have deficient site conditions with poor pavement, vehicle circulation, and drainage, deteriorating exteriors, including poor insulation, rotting windows, and leaky roofs, decaying 20-year-old modular classrooms, which were meant to be temporary solutions, and aging interiors that are not fully accessible. Both schools would require total replacement or significant upgrades to basic systems like heating, ventilation, and electrical to remain in operation. Even with upgrades and repairs, neither Cushing nor Hatherley have the capacity to deliver the type of programming that grants our children an excellent educational experience for the next 60 years. That's
Caitlin, you
central
wanna
to how
cut it?
we designed a single new school.
Great. Thank you. One long one. Yeah, we picked a long one. Thanks, Caitlin.
Convince me.
Yeah.
Right. It's just, they're
They
really.
need a new school, definitely.
So they're really well done. They have different pillars, so we would like to move forward. That's not something we would be able to do easily in-house at all.
So when we say pillars, those are the each video is a pillar.
What is the timing? I mean, are they done like every month, or is it throughout the project, or what?
He can turn them around. He can turn multiples around in like 1 to 2 weeks because he uses the same type of format. He just plugs in. But we would obviously, we would use a lot of those up to the vote.
Up to the vote.
Right, that's why we wanted to get him on now to start that process of up to the vote.
And I think we have to figure it out, but I think the idea was you might do one, I'll say reasonably soon,
Yes,
to get that first message out. And then maybe another one, come fall, kids are getting back into school, you want to do another. I would suggest saving maybe 2 of them
Right.
for right before the vote so that you're getting that message out there. But I think he also said you could do kind of the 6 together, like spread out, and then before the vote, you can actually do larger ones like that one, which is a combination of multiple pillars that, somebody could watch all 6 of them at one time, that type of thing. So I think for $600 a piece, it's actually very affordable. And they did say that they could customize them to our needs if we wanted to talk about the pre-K options, for example. If we wanted to talk about sustainability, they can work in those key components into those videos to get that message out to everybody.
that's great. Once you see it, it's.
I guess that's another question. How would that message get out? I mean,
So I think it can go across Facebook. We have social media through the town already, so we're connecting through those, so it can go out that way. It can go out on our website. It can get out there a number of ways. If we have community forums, we can actually play them at the community forum, or you could have them playing kind of outside the community forum as people are walking in. So it really gives you a wide range of opportunities there.
We'll definitely have
And then
one
go on our
website.
but also RCTV and,
Yeah.
That'd be a good one.
because the majority of people in town don't know that the Killam School Building Committee exists. They don't know that Killam is planning to be, people are totally ignorant of it.
I think that's one of the reasons we had talked early on, for example, on Twitter, for example, did we want to Killam School Twitter account, or did we want to just use the town account that already has followers? And we said, let's not reinvent the wheel, let's stick with the town one, which already has a lot of followers. So they don't need to know that we exist, we're gonna put it on the town is gonna distribute it.
Yeah, we distribute on social media through all the partner sites too, so there's
Yeah.
the school site, there is a Killam School specific project site, but we share across all of our social
Yeah,
media.
the
and
dedicated screen at Bunrat is or something like
Oh,
that.
really? Now you're talking.
Now I'm
Fine.
talking, yeah.
Now you're talking, right? St. Patrick's Day next year, put it
Sure.
around. I see what you're doing. I like it.
All right, so I did talk about the budget adjustments. if I can flip back just for a second, so we are looking for a budget adjustment to move some money in to pay for the cartoon. We're also having a budget adjustment to move some money in to pay for the estimating services. The soils testing, I'm just gonna flip back to that first page. We already have a surplus of uncommitted costs there, so we would be just using some of the uncommitted costs there. So what I'd be looking for tonight is a vote of acknowledgement of the cartoon, because that one was signed off and we were proceeding on that as of the 10th. And then a vote of approval for the 2 LBA that we can enter into those contracts.
So you need a motion?
Yeah.
Motion to approve the LBA contract amendments,
6 and 7.
Amendments 6 and 7.
amendment 6 and 7. Should probably do it separately, right? Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
I second it.
Second. And well, any discussion? Nope, we'll take a vote. Pat,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
John,
Yes,
Nancy,
Yes.
Carla, yes. So that passes 5-0.
Need a motion to acknowledge the amendment or the contract to cartoon, yeah, ETU.
Second.
Seconded by Karen. Any discussion? No, we'll take a vote. Pat,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
John,
thank you, yes.
Carla, yes. And that passes 5-0.
Excellent, thank you very much. Just to finish the financial updates here, we do have some invoices which we'll be talking about with the warrants tonight. I believe last month when we met, we had not got the Colliers one in, so you actually have 2 from us, one from the April services and one from the May services, and then we have the LBA from April. We're working with them to get their April one in process, so that'll be presented next time. But those are the 2 invoices that we have. With that understanding, we have our cash flow that we update monthly. And I always like to show the graph rather than the numbers. You can see the green is our expected budget and the red is where we're trending right now. So we're a little bit below. I think part of that is that we don't have that one extra LBA one, that May one. If we had that in here, it would show it up a little bit higher. And I think we're trending to be under a little bit on our billing, based off of what we were anticipating. So that's always a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Didn't we have another vote to take? We had, what was the first one?
So I think
We did the
You
2
did the
together.
2 together and the first
Yeah,
one, yes.
six
yes,
and
okay.
seven.
And then the cartoon was the second one.
Okay.
Yes.
And just to be clear on that, I didn't ask for a specific separate vote for the budget adjustments, moving the contingencies. And I assume because we had to do it for those amendments that it was part of that vote.
Yes.
All right, if there's no other questions on the financials, I am going to move into our next section, which is, sorry, I'm just gonna, total project budget. And I'm gonna start with this sheet here. I'm gonna actually flip over from the PDF to an Excel file because I want to be able to show formulas and things like that from time to time. So I'm going to just stop sharing for a second here and I'm going to share the Excel. So this is that same file. I've tried to make it small enough here that it kind of fits all on one page, but as we get into it, I will probably zoom in so that you can see the numbers and you can actually see the words, so we're not kind of scrambling for that. But there's been a lot of questions in regards to total project budget. I think it was 2 meetings ago, we brought forth the construction estimates and we priced up, we provided those estimates based off of the initial options that we had. Now, just so everybody understands, those options were at a feasibility level, which means not a lot of drawings, more schematic in nature, a lot of narratives. We intend to use this type of heating system, we intend to use this type of skin. It's not, the details aren't all in there, but that's what we do at this early stage. As part of that, the designers put in escalation contingency, which projects it out to when we think we're actually gonna bid it. They also put in design contingency, which is putting a dollar value in there to try and fill in all those gaps that we haven't filled in yet. So as we go through this, you're gonna see over and over again at the DD phase, at the 60% construction phase, at the 90%, you're gonna continue to see escalation in design contingencies. But as we get closer to going out to bid, those get smaller and smaller, basically, proportionally as we go forward. So those were construction costs. Those were based off schematic design. We were asked to take a look at those construction costs and try and project out for total project costs. We're very early in the process here. We haven't picked heating systems. We haven't picked even an option yet. So there's a lot of balls in the air here. So we're trying to do that to give what we've been asked for. But I just want to everybody understand that these numbers are based off of construction estimates, which we were doing apples to apples comparison. We weren't trying to build the final building. It was to say, hey, if we have option A1, A2, B1, B2, C1, C2, we want them all to have the same heating system, so you compare apples to apples. We want all to have the same envelope system, so you're comparing apples to apples. It doesn't mean it's the final design, if you will. So just kind of starting off with that. I did want to share a couple of the bigger assumptions that we put into this. And those are these down here with the little asterisks. I hope everybody can read this here. So currently, the numbers that we're showing are based on a GC, General Contractor, Chapter 149 bid. There's really two options here, Chapter 149, lump sum, low bid, General Contractor, Chapter 149A, CM at risk. We haven't had that discussion yet. I don't know that we're prepared to have that tonight, but in general, the simpler the job, the more likely you are to go 149. The more complex the job, the more likely you are to maybe go CM at risk. But what we're saying is our estimate is if we were to change this to CM at risk right now, we would say that the construction numbers would go up to between 5 and 10% higher than what we're showing right now. So we have not done that right now. It assumes 5% contingency. So not to confuse you, I just talked to you a minute ago about design contingency and escalation contingency. Those are actually part of the construction value. In addition to that, we have owner's contingency and construction contingency that is what you're going to use to fund any unforeseen conditions, any change orders down the line. So that's built into your number. Again, I'll show that to you in a little bit more. 5% is reasonably healthy. I think, I've done Chapter 149 projects with 3.5%. And, if you're talking $100 million, every percent is $1 million, right? So 5% is, again, a little bit comfortable, but again, could be adjusted down. That's the assumption we've made at this time. Swing space costs are assumed, but need to be confirmed. So what we mean by that is there's different swing space requirements for the different options, and we'll get into that in just a little bit. These numbers are based off of assumptions. Again, we have not been able to confirm exact values here on swing spaces. That's probably one of the bigger unknowns right now. So wanted to identify that. When we get into the options up above, we'll be talking about the current design based off the current construction values, and what if we were to try and take as much as 15% off of that value. So I think what I was trying to explain before on this, when I was thinking to myself, is that our current estimates have ground source heat pumps. They have I'm going to say they have the higher level finishes. Not saying it's over the top, but it's making that building very energy efficient. It's making the building meet all the educational requirements and everything. I'll call it the fully loaded car, if you will. We can get a car that's not fully loaded and it still does everything that you need, right? So what would we do to make it not fully loaded? And I think what we're trying to do by putting the 15% in there, we're saying, hey, that 15%, in talking with the design team, we still feel that we can meet all those requirements that we were talking about earlier. LEED, stretch energy code, the 3 bonus points, the indoor air quality, all the educational, we still feel we can do that even if we took 15% off of those estimates. If you ask me to take 25% off, I would defer to Lee and Jenny. That's when we might start affecting durability, long-term operational, educational program, things of that nature. But we wanted to give you a range here, right? We want to say, hey, this building could be from this range to this range. So that 15% is what we chose there. How do we get to the 15%? Right now, about 10% of that cost is the ground source heat pumps. Changing that out to, say, an air source heat pump, again, still very efficient. We pulled that one out just because it's one item that's such a large value. The other 5% is just other things that Lee and Jenny felt, they felt if you challenged them to cut 5%, they could do that without impacting durability, operational, educational, all those things. The last assumption I have here is that we assume $2,200 per student for the enrollment only, and I'll explain to that to you in a little bit. That's for FF&E and technology. So the reason why that's important is the MSBA will pay for the design enrollment of 455 students, $1,200 per student for FF&E and $1,200 per student for technology. When I first became an OPM 14 years ago, those limits were $1,200 each. They have not changed in 14 years. So I would say up till COVID hit, I was pretty good at getting FF&E for that $1,200 still. Technology was a struggle. After COVID, we're seeing double. So the $2,200 I think is a real number there. Not a huge part of this, but again, an important part of it. So I'm gonna go back up to the top here now. So to start, I'm gonna zoom out just a little bit here just so you can see the overall here. So I have,
Could I?
oh sure, jump in.
Was there a point tonight we were gonna talk about, we got an answer from the MSBA on the educational value on a centralized solution? Were we gonna present that tonight to the committee?
That's
Is
part
that
of this,
it?
yeah,
All right,
yeah. So what we've done here is we've tried to group this first gray bar, and I'm gonna zoom back in a minute, is the larger building option. So we have option A1, B1, C1, D1, E1. Those are all the different options. That's the 3-story building, the 2-story fat building, the 2-story skinny building. It's all the options that we presented before. And we had actual estimates on all of those. And what we've done is we've tried to identify, we grouped those into the larger options here for the A1, B1, C1, D1, E1. And then we did the smaller building option for A2, B2, C2, D2. So those two subgroups are basically full pre-K upstairs and reduced pre-K downstairs. Really, if we look on the gray bar, the larger building, including enrollment of 455 K-5 students and 120 pre-K students, total area of that building is 122,650 square feet. That's for all these options under that. Down below, smaller building, including enrollment of 455 and 40 pre-K. So instead of 120 like we have up here, it's 40. So that difference of 80, what that does is that drops the building square footage by about 19,000 square feet. So 103,000. So all of these options are the 103,000 square foot building. Now, just going across the columns here, so we have the options identified here, A1, B1, so forth. We have the general description of the building. So you have A1 is the addition renovation option. B1 was the 3-story building. C1 was the 2-story wide building. D1 was the 2-story narrow building. And E1 was the 2-story narrow building with the students moved. So that's what we had presented previously. Going on to the swing space, in these first 3 options, we would have to move the modular units only. So we'd have to move those students. We've had discussions with the superintendent and with the principal. We feel that there's opportunities for, with the RISE program and with the kindergarten to have some flexibility there. So we don't think it's a huge lift here, but we do know that there's going to be costs associated with that. D1, that's the narrower building. We would have to move the modulars and 1 pod. So that takes a little bit more. And then E1 is the full building is moved to swing space of some sort. And we can talk about that a little bit more. You can see the durations. Each of these have different durations for construction. And then we have the overall construction costs. I will get into the reimbursement in a little bit, but I just wanted to show this. The reimbursement in general for the new building is all the same. The renovation, you get additional bonus points from the MSBA for renovating. And so that's why we're showing that the renovation option would be 53%, but it's 53% of a higher construction value. Looking at a very high level here, if we look at B1, C1, D1, and E1, those four options there, we're at 105.2 at the low end, 106.8 at the upper end. So they're all within about $1 million of the average, if you will. So from my perspective, none of these options are really being driven by cost. They're all relatively equal, if you will. So it just my observation for you. The reason why I tell you that is I'm going to show you some detailed breakdowns in a minute. For me to try and do all of these options in a detailed breakdown gets very complicated very quickly. So what we did is we picked B1 just because it was the first one that was not the renovation, basically. And we plugged that in here. So you can see mods only, modulars only. You can see 34 months here, 34 months here. So everything here, the 106, 797, the 106, 797. And then we projected out for the rest of the costs. We then took B1 minus the 15% to give us the lower range on that. So it's that same building, same duration, with the construction value reduced by 15%. And then I also did want to do an E1 for the full swing space, just so we had we could have that as a discussion point. Everything that I just told you about the large building, we did that exact same thing for the small building. The only thing is we didn't do an E2 with the estimates, so I didn't try to make an E2 up. We just didn't have that done. If we feel that that's important, we can always go back to the estimators for it, but we didn't have that done initially. So I know I just gave you a whole lot of information, but I hope it was relatively clean, but I'm happy to answer any questions before I go to the next step.
On the A1, Mike, addition renovation, that presumably would be done under 149A, right? Presumably.
So right now, this is based off of 149, but you're right. If we were to go to that, it would probably be 149A.
Would it not be good in here to cost that out by adding the 5 or 10%?
We could certainly do that, yeah.
Maybe put an asterisk on it saying this is what we've done, because it's probably going to be 149A.
It could, and just, I'm glad you brought that up, because there's a lot of examples like that. Like, I'll give you another one. These first, B1, C1, and D1 all assume that the students are on the site. But they all assume ground source heat pumps right now as well. And I don't think that I can do ground source heat pumps with the students on the site. So the pricing here is trying to keep it apples to apples, but you're 100% right that B1 really isn't 106.7. B1, with the assumptions we made, is 106.7. But the reality is, one of those assumptions is ground source heat pumps, which I don't know that I could give you that right now. So that's some of the work that we're going to be doing, trying to narrow these down in over the next month or two. But it's absolutely a valid point that again, this is why it's a little early for me to give this to you, but that's why we're trying to answer the questions we've been asked on that.
And the other question is, personally, I would eliminate the value engineering at this stage, because I think it's people will look at that and say, well, if you can take 15% out of the building, why don't you just take it out? And I don't think that's what we want.
What I wanted to do was present that to everybody tonight, because here's where I'm going with it is, I think at the end of the night, if I can jump to to this column here, with the current construction estimate for B1, with all the soft cost contingency and everything added in, I'm projecting a total construction value of 135.8. That same building, if we took the value engineering, is 117, round numbers here. So what I would propose is, if we're talking about building B1, we would say it's a range of $115,000 to $136,000. Like, that's how I came up with the range. If people want to know, did you just take 10% off or add 10? Like, no, we actually did kind of as much of a scientific analysis as we could. And the rationale there is that I don't want everybody to get stuck on the 135.8. I also don't want you to get stuck on 117. We're probably not building either of those buildings. There's going to be a little bit of give and take somewhere in between those, probably more towards the upper side from what I'm hearing, but again, cost could drive that down. But I think what we want to do is, when we come out of here tonight, I would recommend that whenever we're talking about these, that we would use that range. And that's why we were showing it. But you're right, it's too early right now to be taking value engineering, but I think as we progress this design, as we start making decisions, we're not necessarily making them because they're value engineering, but the decisions are going to be adjusting that building. So maybe my wording of value engineering is not a good idea.
Because that 15% could apply to any of these schemes, right?
It could.
Yeah, so I don't know why you put it only on B1. You know, it's kind of confusing to people looking at this for the first time
Yeah.
and say, well, B1 is, you can take 15% out of that, but you can't take it out of the others.
No, so I did do it on B1 and B2, and I only did B1 and B2 because, let me jump here for a second. If I show you, so this is the form from the MSBA, just to sense, we have to fill in a lot of numbers, there's a lot of calculations, and all of these numbers, again, just kind of showing you the high level here, that's for one option. And so what I'm showing you tonight on this summary, I'm actually showing you 3 options here on the large and 2 options on the small. If I were to do all of these options, I would have had, let's see, 5, I would have had 10 options on the large and 8 options on the small, and it just gets very complicated. So you're absolutely right. The B1 was the one I chose just to do this calculations again, so that people understand it, with the understanding that what we said a few minutes ago, the difference in construction costs between B1, C1, D1, and E1 is not noticeably different.
Yeah, but could you not, instead of putting a minus 15%, could you just put a range of numbers in here? In other words, you have not a low and a high, but a range.
I think at the end, that's what we would do. If we maybe have a summary on top of this that says, here's our range for the building with pre-K and all those assumptions and ground source heat
I think
pumps.
that's less confusing to somebody looking at this for the first time, and they're saying, why did you choose B1 for 15%, or why not put a range of lows to highs, all of them, maybe?
I'm not gonna be able to do a range of lows to highs for all of them. It's gonna take me another day. Well, I shouldn't say I'm not. I can do that, but
I think the point is to get what we're gonna say to the public, this is what we think it's gonna be, regardless of what we choose.
How do you tell the public what that 15% is?
No, I'm not saying that. I agree with you that it shouldn't
I
be
don't
a
think
value
I don't think we
engineering.
can explain that to the public.
well, it's right there. It's 10% for ground source heat pumps, 5% for other design items the design team will address.
But you've
the
only
public-
applied it to one scheme. And I think that's what we can't sell to the public. It's only, this thing applies to all schemes.
Yes, and that,
Yes, sir.
Mike, I could make a couple observations or recommendations. In your spreadsheet, where you take B1 and you take the 15% out of it, if you did that, to the extent we're presenting this, if instead of doing B1, if you just took the average of those 4, which is like you had it highlighted for, so it's 106,300,000, as opposed to 106,797. If you use that number, 106,383,995, everything plays out the same. But I agree with John 100%. That changes the message from you can reduce B1 by 15% to you can potentially reduce anything from B1 to E1 by 15%. And I fully agree with John that it's, by definition, it's too early to describe it as VE, and maybe just a change of terminology there, potential cost savings.
Yeah. So I can work on 15% building reduction or a cost reduction or something like that. I can do the averages, but just so you understand, what happens is that construction value is broken into a number here, and then numbers here, like, I would then have to do the average on dozens of numbers to get that to total out correctly.
so
Yeah.
so under
Yeah.
E1, can you add a line there, right? That's just a separate line that's not attached to any of the back
Yeah.
information, and just call it like all options, right? And then find the average, like Pat said.
Yeah.
Of the, 106, 105, 107, 105, find that average and then have that number as the high cost and then do the value engineering of 15% as a low cost. And then we just say, this is just a representation of all of our options, not all of our options, all of our new construction options with the students on site. And then it maybe just dispels all of that information. So we have three, we'll have an addition renovation option, A1, we'll have an all-inclusive option, and then we'll have a remove the kids from the site option, potentially, just to make it clearer.
I can do that. So I will add that in.
Thank you. Does that satisfy everyone? We good?
Maybe when I see it, yeah. Depends what Mike does.
Just don't call it value engineering.
Yeah, it's, I just think it's confusing as it is presented. It confused me, but I confuse easily, it's easy.
I don't wanna belabor this, but Mike, I did have a couple of other comments and a question.
Sure thing.
Well, just from a commentary standpoint, the commentary on CM at risk, there's no doubt, I would think we would, an addition renovation would lend itself more to CM at risk.
Yep.
And new construction would lend itself more to design bid build. But that's not hard and fast. Both methods could be done with either procurement method.
Absolutely.
And I'm taking the over on your 5 to 10% on that price increase. I think there's plenty of data out there that shows more like 10 to 20. But just one person's opinion. The question I have is the 4 options that you have that are effectively the same number because they're within high to low, they're within 2.5 million, which is, within the margin of error for an estimate at this point.
Yes.
Truly believe, and does the design team, does Colliers and LDA truly believe that any one of these 4 options, building it, is truly the same price?
My one.
So, this is Lee. At this point, since they are boxes, right, with all the same assumptions, if one is 3 stories and one is 2 stories, but one's spread out and one's in, they're all the same square footage, exactly, gross square footage. It's very difficult right now to kind of calculate. Now, they did calculate some roof stuff and what they thought might be roof and wall and all of that at a conceptual level. But until we really, get further, I do think that they're probably all within 2 or 3, because none of them are fancy. They're all pretty simple and straightforward. I can't tell you which one's going to be more or less in a year, but if you thought of them all as being relatively the same, then it takes away the choice of, hey, a 2-story scheme is less expensive than a 3-story is probably not, or is, depending on the exact scheme, which you don't have right now. We have layouts. You see the impossibility of being able to answer that question, other than they all seem pretty darn close. At least that's what Collier says.
Yeah. So the one thing I would add to that, Lee, is that we have not vetted out the cost of the swing space, and the swing space is a big chunk of the cost on this last option, this E1 option. Well, I'll get to that in a little bit, but that's the one that I would say might be different than these when we get those final numbers, Pat, is we're starting to get to that point where we've been meeting with some people locally trying to figure out what that swing space cost might be. We're trying to get the design team out to look at some spaces to see what a fit out of a swing space might cost, because that could blow this one out of the waters, to be honest. But the other thing that we are looking at is, again, we're comparing apples to apples here. We're showing 34 months for all of these. And the reality is we're showing that's 24 months to build the building. We move the students in, and then it's another 10 months to demo the old building and do all the parking lots and all the fields and everything like that. The reason why this one is 24 months is because we're tearing down the building at the same time we're building it, so we lose that second phase. But I think there is room for discussion about that 24 months, for example. 122,000 square foot building, if we do early packages potentially on switchgear or things like that, we might be able to reduce that overall construction of 24 down to, 22 or 20 or 18, something like that. We don't want to go too aggressive on it, but I think looking at things like that, again, is something we'll do once we pick the final option, that's the option we're moving for. But I would think on any one of these, I could probably drive the cost down a little bit. If that general contractor is charging whatever, Pat, you probably know the numbers better than I do, X dollars per month. If it's $100,000 or 200,000, whatever that number is, if I can cut 3 months or 4 months or 5 months, that's money getting cut off.
Okay, that all makes sense. I just want to make sure, I think we're going to very quickly lose sight of the potential cost difference between different designs.
Yeah.
And if they're truly all within that range, that's, how we should be making that decision, because they're all very close. Just seems to me that, that there would be some data out there that would be able to lead us to, some feedback on which of those might be less expensive, or more expensive.
Yeah.
But that's good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just a quick question, I apologize, I asked this before in our smaller meeting, under the value engineering where you're pulling out ground source heat pumps, because it was a nice big line item, does that estimate reflect, potential ELA, 30% reimbursement, or we're not that far yet?
This is construction value, so if we do have incentives, any incentives come at the end of the project, not at the beginning, so you're gonna have to pay for it all up front. So this is not taking life cycle analysis into, this is straight construction, like if you
No, I'm
want.
talking about tax credits, which is just like another
Those are at the end of the
MSBA.
project, after the project's done, you don't get those before.
Right, but in terms of commentary, it doesn't reflect incentives, full incentives?
It doesn't reflect anything to do with life cycle or incentives.
Okay, cause it's different than life cycle incentives.
No, it's all part of the same discussion, because here, the bottom line is, for example, if we have a $135 million project, if that's the project we decide to go out with, that's the number you're giving the voters. You might get $10 million in incentives. That's at the end of the project. You still have to have the $135 million on the vote.
So, but what we have to present to the voters is, what's it gonna really cost you? So yeah.
It's gonna really cost you the full amount at the beginning. And if there are reimbursements, you technically truly don't know them till the end. I know what you're saying is you wanna be able to say to the voters, hey, look, we could get these incentives, and maybe that's part of it, is we could get these incentives, but we won't realize it until the end.
But we're gonna know though, we're gonna know before the vote whether we're gonna get them or not.
No, you're not. You're gonna know once the
Say
building is
that.
built, and then what happens is you design the building to make certain performance requirements.
Mhm.
Once the building is built, you have to then show that that building meets those requirements. And once it meets those requirements, then you get the incentives.
For the ELA, you know this for a fact, that this is how that works. You have to provide performance.
That's not how the IRA works, because the
Sorry,
IRA
thank you, IRA, I'm like losing it at dinner.
IRA is
Yes,
based on,
thank you.
just installing the
Yeah,
specific
it's just the
equipment.
equipment you buy, so that's what I mean, that's more real.
But it's still, you're still signing a
But it is a bad-
contract for
yeah.
$106 million. You still have a total project budget of 136. Again, this is very early in this process.
Right, so it's
Yeah.
just commentary, it doesn't include, to Pat's point, like, cause that just looks like, oh, well, then we would never do that, it's so easy, but it's more complicated, it's more nuanced, there will be IRA incentives. And you're right, and that will be part of our presentation.
And that's why I didn't want to show this tonight.
It's okay, this is good.
That's the type of thing, that's why I don't,
That's fine.
we're very early on, we can't project those out yet, so.
Yeah, Okay, well,
So
you
this
can
is-
stop
this is
taking on
com-
ground
yeah.
source heat pumps too, I mean, that's another way, and I don't fault you, this is really helpful. And we got the same kind of numbers on the senior center, and people were asking the same questions, they're like, oh, they're all coming out the same. So it's okay, I think I'm seeing, you know, you try to price anything out this early, you're gonna get these kind of like really big, don't pin me down numbers, but yeah. I don't wanna fault you for doing this, I know you put a lot of work in this.
And I don't think we're singling out ground source. I think we've got lots of options here. They all include ground source heat pumps. So to say that we're singling them out, like, it just so happens that that's something that doesn't affect educational program and has a steep upcharge on it on day one.
Yeah, we're gonna have to agree to disagree on that. That we're accurately reflecting what this is based on your answer to this question, which is just straight, like, what does it cost? I'm just costing it, I haven't considered this other stuff. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that's what, these are the numbers you would be signing your agreement with the MSBA on. That's what we're
Yeah,
trying
no,
to show
full
here.
transparency, absolutely.
So, all right, so I can go through the details. I wasn't intending to go through very high details, but what I would say is I kind of gave you a preference. This is what is called the 3011 form. This is the form that the MSBA actually fills in all the details on, and they use to calculate out what your reimbursement rates are going to be, what your reimbursables are. In general, I'm going to keep it at a very high level. Again, happy to get into all the minutia if we need to, but column B here is the estimated budget amount. So that's the total estimated cost. We scroll down, so this is B1. This is gonna get us to the very bottom, that 136 number, the 135.8. The next column over is a list of all the ineligible costs. So when we talk about your reimbursement rate of 51.45, you're never gonna hear me say your reimbursement is 51.45. 51.45 of the eligible costs.
Yep.
And for example, on this project, on this one example of $129.5 million, a little over 55 million of that is ineligible. So that means roughly $74 million is eligible for that 50% reimbursement. And that calculates out to a maximum facilities grant of $38 million, which you can see down here as well.
So I was looking at the Winchester financial page, and they're a bit further along, they're hoping to complete their project this year.
Yes.
So those are the kind of numbers then in like the pillars, then they're like, and we wanna do this project, cause we're getting like $38.9 million back from the MSBA. So I could see how
Yeah.
this is gonna start feed into what's the kind of information that we're gonna be able to present to our community as we get further into it, okay.
So the reimbursement percentage, maybe I'll get into a little detail here just so you understand where we're coming from on that. The current project you're doing with feasibility and schematic, you're getting 45.95%. That's based off of lots of calculations on average annual income, how many students are on meal assistance, things of that nature. It calculates. That does not change very quickly. It changes, over time, it might change up and down a little bit. That's what we're using as the assumption that you're gonna get going forward. I don't know that I've had any projects that it's actually changed from schematic design to the final project. So I think that's a reasonable assumption that we put in there. There's another 5.5 points of total incentives that we've added here. And those are calculated here. We have, I've put in 1.5% for your maintenance program. So if you don't have a maintenance program, you get 0. If you have a fabulous one, you get 2. I believe we might be more on that fabulous side, but I'm being a little bit more conservative and saying 1.5. Typically, I see anywhere from 1.2 to 1.7 on that. So again, 1.5 might be a little conservative. At this level, that extra 0.5% is $500,000, right? Or maybe even a little bit more. So just understand that. We're not a newly formed regional school district. On this option here, this is a new option, so there is no renovation. The way these 5 points are calculated, if it was a complete renovation with no new building, you get 5 points. If it's a complete new building with no renovation, you get 0. If it's 50-50, you get 2.5. It's just a straight math on that, so we're not doing that. we talked a little bit with Jane on overlay zones. Even though we have some overlay zones in the town, the school does not fall within those overlay zones, so we don't have that as an option. We are assuming the 4 points for green schools, so that's 3 points for being above the energy code and 1 point for the indoor air quality. And so 1.5 on the maintenance, 4 on the energy efficiency, that's how we get to our 5.5. If I go back over here, we have our baseline, we have our 5.5, and we add that together, and that's how you get to the 51.4. Now, let me jump back to the summary sheet here for a second. On these 3 options, again, I think if we went across all of them, you'd have very similar numbers. But in general, on these 3 options, on this option here, we have 136 million, I'm talking round numbers, 136 million, 51.45 of eligible costs is reimbursed. What that actually translates to is $97 million town share, which is 28% of actual costs is reimbursed. So when we talk about eligible versus actual, you can see there's a pretty substantial difference there. I will tell you, in October of 23, the MSBA raised their caps substantially. These numbers would be a lot worse if we'd done it under the old numbers. Right now, we're assuming $550 a square foot is the cap, and $52 a square foot is the site work cap, because that's where it is right now. There's probably gonna be at least 1 vote, hopefully, before we go forward, where the MSBA might increase that by maybe another 3.5% or something like that.
Chester mentioned a 2022 price cap
Yeah.
adjustment as well, so I'm like, yes, let's make it an annual.
So in 2023, the MSBA went forward at their board meeting, and they did some adjustments, I'm gonna say for projects, COVID projects. So for about the last 2.5 years, they also made a substantial update. Anything over, I think it's 3%, actually has to go to legislature for approval, and they actually did. Because the cap of that 3% or 3.5% is actually written into the law. Like, they can only increase it by so much. They can go less if they want without legislature, but they can't go more. Right, so again, the upper end on that building is this. The lower end, if we were to reduce the cost, again, I'm not gonna use that VE word, if we were to reduce the cost on $117 million here, your eligible is 51%, your actual actually goes up to almost 32.5%. So because the cost goes down, what we're actually seeing here, the difference between 135 and 116 is 18.9 million. The difference in town share is 18.9 million. So basically that full 15% that you might be adjusting is all town money. And that's really what we wanted to show there. Similarly, we did the same kind of exercise down here on the smaller building with the reduced pre-K. We were at 120 million here and 103 million here. And you can see the numbers are similar, but a little bit higher. So on the smaller building, we get a little bit better reimbursement rate. And again, the difference on the total project from the 120 to the 103 is the 16.2, and the town share is actually 16.3. So by reducing the building, the town share actually goes down by even a little bit more than the overall. The last thing I wanted to point out here is, if we look at these in general, this is about a $117 million building, and that has a town share of 79 million. This is 120 million and it has a town share of 84 million. So even though those total projects are similar size, similar dollar values, the town share is actually greater here, is less here than it is here because of the square footages that we're working with.
Fascinating.
So I'm happy to
Thank
get
you.
into the details.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
So I'm happy to get into the details if people have questions, but the eligibles, ineligibles, I can spend hours kind of going through that, and I'm happy to do that. Maybe not tonight, but maybe at another, if anybody has any questions, but happy to go through that in depth with anybody that would like to.
So this is, right, one piece of the puzzle. The design team met and the OPM met with the the teachers to find out what their option was and what their desire was for the best type of school for learning. And then we're gonna, so that's another input to this. The sustainability committee is gonna have a meeting and that's gonna be another input to this to help make the decision by the time we get to August.
Absolutely. And I think big picture here, this starts to give you order of magnitudes, if you will, on
Yes,
projects
thank
and understanding where that is. And I think you need to kind of probably talk internally a little bit or talk with constituents and things like that and find out what is the appetite for total project costs and how does that play into everything? Because again, first and foremost here is we need to meet the educational program, right? That's the first thing that we need to do. The next thing we want to do is we want a very sustainable and a building that has low operation costs, right? We don't want to have something that costs us a lot every year to operate. And then there's all those other parts of the community pieces, all the, the neighborhoods and working with all those different things and just, do we need more parking? Do we need less parking? Do we want, more fancy auditorium or cafetorium, or can we, adjust that down? There's lots of different discussions that you can have. After we pick that preferred option in August, that's when a lot of those decisions really start to get made.
Okay. Thank you, Mike. That was huge. And any questions?
Good presentation.
Anybody online have any questions? Yeah, that's huge.
Actually, I just have one question, Mike.
Sure thing.
As we're going through the process, with everything budget-wise, particularly as we're coming up on, I think there's gonna be some cost analyses on like the various HVAC systems.
Yes.
Are we going to, vet that against historical data? And understanding that there's inflation involved, but like where the HVACs are all filed sub-bids, and we have data, we should have access to data on like the cost of every HVAC system that's gone into a mass school in the last 20 years. I'm not interested in all of it, but there's a lot of, I think there's a tremendous amount of good data there at the MSBA to compare any of these numbers to. I understand that I'll follow that up. I understand the challenge of trying to put dollars next to things at this phase, and I really appreciate the effort everyone on your team and Lee's team has done. The information here is fantastic. Just as we're going forward, is it possible to be betting this stuff against MSBA historical data?
We can, and if you give me a second, let me just pull up the, I want to actually pull up the estimate that we actually, or some of the estimates that we've used here. So first and foremost, I believe Lee and his experts, the HVAC experts and things like that, they're going to look at the projects, maybe not every MSBA project, but certainly all the projects they've done. But the other big advantage we have here is that Lee is using PM&C as their estimator, and PM&C, I would say, I'm not out of line to say that they're probably on more than 2/3 of all MSBA projects. They just do a lot of work with it. Whenever I do a bid, they always contact me and get the bid results, and they actually reach out to the vendors and they actually try to understand why were they higher than somebody or lower than somebody, and understand one of the things that they try to do when we look at their numbers here, and I'm just going to go to this first. So this is where I got all those construction numbers. When we look at this number, this 106.7, what Pete will tell us is that on bid day, he's hoping that this number would be third in a group of 5. So he's not trying to give us the low bid number. He's trying to give us like the safe bid number, if you will. So they've been pretty accurate on that, and they're constantly updating their pricing based off of that. So they do talk to contractors and subcontractors, and they do try to constantly update their pricing, and they always price it. I mentioned earlier contingencies here, so they always price it. So their price is based off of construction today. And then what they do is we add an escalation to the start, and then we add the design contingency to finish the design. So I do think that we've taken that into account here, Pat, and I think we're gonna continue to do it. We're gonna bring an estimator on board as well. I know we've talked about AM Fogarty and RLB. I'm not sure if we've finalized with one of those yet, but again, I think those three estimators do a large percentage of MSBA jobs, and they all go back and definitely do try to look at that historic information and actually see where we're at compared to that.
Excellent, thank you. And again, this is, thank you all for doing this, the information in this presentation. And I've been going through the actual live Excel file spreadsheet. It's quite detailed, a lot of information, so thank you very much.
And not, just so everybody understands, when we see these numbers, we're looking at the big numbers, but if I went, you can see this page is 112 pages long. Like, when we get into the electrical, it's line by line, like, you don't just say, oh, that's a $20 million electrical number. You add up all the parts and pieces, and you fill in the information as best you can, and that's how you get to the number. So that's what they do. They do detailed takeoffs, even though there wasn't anything to take off here. You know, they're doing it kind of off of a floor plan and off of a general site plan, kind of saying, I assume I'm gonna bring electric into the building from here. I assume that we're gonna have this many linear feet of plumbing pipes, again, based off of historic information.
Great. I thank you for all that, because the information in the back is really, it's comprehensive. And we know we keep pushing on numbers, and sometimes we don't always get what you want. And we just have to be cognizant that we're at a certain point in the process, and that those numbers are gonna be refined and they're gonna change throughout the next year until we go for the bid. And even at that point in time, they're not gonna be exact.
And maybe one more thing, just so everybody understands, we made certain assumptions in there for the, like for the square footage space, and Jenny actually reached out to Shirley and I today, and we have a meeting Thursday morning, is it? Thursday morning. We made certain assumptions on the smaller pre-K option and the larger pre-K option, how much square footage would be eligible and ineligible. And we're actually gonna try and meet with them, for example, to see, did we over or underestimate those? And if we did, we'll make some adjustments and we'll redo all these forms again, and we'll send it over to you. But we're trying to, we know that's a big number as well. Just like the ground source heat pump is I might be losing my power on my computer. So the ground source heat pumps and the pre-K are two of the bigger numbers. So we're trying to get a better handle on that. So we're gonna continue to refine these throughout the process, and hopefully get us to a better number at the end.
Right.
Not hopefully, it will get us to a better number at the end.
Thank you. Super. Okay, we don't need any more warrant votes, right? Do we need another?
So just the warrant votes would be for the three invoices that we've
done that.
No, we didn't.
No, we did the three ad services, but we did not do the three invoices. And I can pull up my power cord if I need to, but it's
So let's do, I move,
it was the Collier's April, the Collier's May, and I believe it was LBA's April.
so I move to approve the three following invoices: Collier's April invoice and May invoice and LBA's invoice.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. Pat?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
And Carla, yes, and it passes 5-0. Thank you. And
Yeah.
I'm just saying, I had no warning, it just, the
Blast.
battery just went.
and
The timing.
well, another motion to approve the May 9th Killam School Building Committee meeting minutes.
Move to approve, did you move it or do you want me to move it?
Perfect, go ahead.
Move it, the Killam School Building Committee minutes dated May 9th.
Second.
Second, any discussion? Pat,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
and Carla, yes, and that passes 5-0. Future agenda items, we just know, in our packet, it talks about the next meetings that we have. And the next, Killam School Building Committee will be July 8th and then the 22nd. So, and
We also have a community forum in between those on the 15th.
we have a community forum on the July 15th and August 8th. And we have a bunch of other meetings too.
So we'll talk about then, my question earlier was really like a response from the MSBA on the pre-K centralized, but that looks like it'd be part of the future agenda item we referenced.
So we, at the next Killam School Building Committee meeting, we will have the superintendent make a presentation on the benefits of having the larger, all-encompassing Killam RISE program under one roof, and what impact it will have on the rest of the town.
In the response, because you sent in and that's with the response from the MSBA, or we're still waiting?
So maybe I can elaborate a little bit. So we reached out to the MSBA to see about reimbursement on the pre-K, and they basically kind of reiterated what they had stated before, that when you initially submitted your statement of interest, you indicated that pre-K was going to be part of the discussion. So they're open to that. And in general, they allow classroom spaces to be eligible, office spaces and other ancillary spaces are ineligible. So I've made some assumptions on my numbers. That's what I'm gonna be meeting with Jenny and Leon to try and nail those down a little bit better, a little bit tighter, because my assumptions could be off one way or the other. But I think what we're mentioning, Carl, is gonna be, Tom's gonna be coming at the next meeting, give a broader overview of everything. Hopefully we'll have been able to refine those numbers a little bit more, so we can talk more specific about dollars and cents on each of the options. And what we will try to do going forward is, as best as we can, whenever we talk about costs, we'll try to a certain degree talk about total project costs and town share, because you can see there's a relationship there, but they can be pretty substantially different depending on your cost per square foot, really. The higher we are, the more town percentages, the lower the cost per square foot, the more we're in line with that MSBA cap.
That answer your question?
I was expecting a yes or a no.
Oh.
But maybe it's tied into our final solution, is that why I'm not getting a yes or
A yes or a no on what?
We're gonna get a.
I can ask again when John presents.
No, well, I think you might be looking for what is the MSBA, like, are they gonna say yes or no, right? So part of their PDP submission back to us will hopefully include some of that
Okay,
information. And then we'll go to the PSR and that will include more information.
And I would say regardless if we go with the smaller or larger,
Right.
if we can show that the educational program is what is dictating that,
Exactly,
the MSBA is going to support it.
Right.
But they're gonna support it in that they're gonna say classroom space is eligible and other spaces are ineligible. So I don't think the MSBA is saying yes for the big and no for the small, or vice versa. They're saying you have to show me what your educational program requires, and then you should be building to that educational program.
Thank you.
I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion?
We don't have to discuss it.
Pat,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Carla, yes, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.